For more Magic the Gathering resources, check out my friends at paperchampion.net and Kitchen Table MTG. Hey everybody, this is Tao at The Forge, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the decks that I've been kind of iffy about doing, but Mono Red Burn. Now, the reason why I've been kind of iffy about doing this is because everyone kind of likes to crap all over Mono Red Burn. It's like, people say like it's just the easiest deck to pilot, you know, like it doesn't take any thought, it's not interactive, all you do is just, you know, cast spells as fast as you can cast them and that's it. What I found actually in playing just a little bit with it is it's actually not quite as simple as that. There's some really bonuses to playing Mono Red Burn, and some things that are kind of bad. I'll talk about the good things first. The first thing that I think of is that it's cheap. And cheap, by cheap I mean inexpensive. You can put this whole thing together for easily less than $100, and basically, like, well, maybe without the Blood Moons and the sideboard, but basically you can put this thing together for under $100. Currently, even with Blood Moons and the sideboard, it'd probably be less than $150. And so, you know, for entry into Modern, to get a really, really highly competitive deck, this is actually a really great deck to put together, especially for a beginner, because it's not super, super complicated. Alright, the second thing is that it's not actually just, you know, cast spells as fast as you can cast them. There are some considerations you have to make. For instance, you have to know when an opponent's spell or creature or whatever is worth wasting one of your burn spells on. So for instance, if your opponent drops something like, let's say, a Monastery Swift Spear, right, and you have 1 mana up with a bolt in hand, do you send that bolt to the face of your opponent, or do you use it to kill their 1/1 Swift Spear? Right? That's a tough decision. Just depends. Like, I would probably use it to kill the Swift Spear, or I'd probably hold it up anyways until the Swift Spear attacked. But the problem is that with Prowess, if you don't kill it right away, it might get too big for you to destroy. So there are some types of decisions that are very difficult. I found one thing that's interesting is because most of the spells here, except for the creatures, are mainly instants. You tend to play kind of like Control, where you you just hold up mana and play most of your stuff on your opponent's turn. Yeah, and the land base, you need surprisingly few lands to run it. So it's very consistent that way. Like, even if you have a 1-lander or a 2-lander, you can usually keep it, and you can usually do really well. In fact, you don't really want to get a lot of lands. Alright, anyways, let's get into the deck. Before I continue, sorry. The downside of it is if someone plays Leyline of Sanctity, you're just screwed, right? If they make themselves hexproof, then there's nothing you can do about it, because red does not have any enchantment destruction, and yeah, you just lose. So, you know, you're just hoping your opponent doesn't have it, or if they have it, that they just don't get it, and then you just burn them out before they get it. So, anyways, that's the downside of it, right? If you, one other good thing, actually, is that you can start with this, and then upgrade to kind of like a Boros build, or a Naya build, or something like that. So you can expand this, like you can add green to it, for instance, and pump your creatures, but actually also mainly for things like Ancient Grudge or Destructive Revelry, and destroy those Leylines of Sanctity and stuff like that. So there's options where you can take this further if you want. There's also, like, there's so much burn and so many great spells that you can add eventually if you get the money, or if you have the inclination to expand the deck. So I actually think this is a very good deck for new players to get into. It's simple to play. It's also easy on the wallet, and you know, it allows you to get into the game, learn the different deck types without having to, you know, be overcomplicated. All right, so let's get into this one. This is mainly based off of Saffron Olive's over at MTG Goldfish, over at his build. Basically, we're playing 18 mountains. Right, we don't want to play too many. Like, a typical deck has between 20 and 24, and we're playing 18 just because we want more burn spells and we don't need very many lands. Alright, so we're starting off 4 Lava Spikes. Okay, so 4 Lava Spikes, the only thing that's bad about Lava Spike is that it's a sorcery, so you have to play it on your turn. If I have a Lava Spike in my hand and I'm going first, I'm inclined to use it first, because basically my opponent won't be able to counter it, right? Like, so if you're a first player, you can play Mountain Lava Spike and get that out of the way as soon as possible. But you can also keep it up if you want. Usually I'll try and play that as soon as I can, though. Lightning Bolt. This is just basically the best red burn spell there is. So 3 damage to the face for 1. Okay, Shard Volley is basically a crappier version of Lightning Bolt. This is actually, like, where Lightning Bolt is typically played on your end step, Shard Volley is usually played more towards the end game, because at the end game you'll probably have like maybe 4 mountains or something like that, and then you can afford to sack the Shard Volleys, sack them for Shard Volley so that you can, you know, do your 3 damage. But you don't want to do this necessarily early game, because otherwise, well, you sack all your lands, you can't cast anything. So, alright. Spark Elemental is actually pretty good. So you basically make a 3/1 creature with haste and trample. It swings in, does 3 damage, and then sacrifices itself. So it's basically a creature version of your Lightning Bolt, but it can be blocked. You know, they can chump it or whatever, but at least it has trample and get through for a little bit. Okay, so Hellspark Elemental. Hellspark Elemental is the big brother of Spark Elemental. Basically, it's the same thing, except one really good thing is that it has Unearth. Okay, so return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, exile at the beginning of the next end step, if it would leave the battlefield. Alright? Now, one of the cool things about this is that when you unearth it, you're not casting it, so it's not counterable. You're just returning it to the graveyard. Right? So when you cast Unearth, like when it goes to the graveyard, especially if you're playing against a counters deck or something like that, it's very often your opponent will tap out with their creatures or tap out with their mana, or just try and hold up a counter, but they forget that you can't counter Hellspark Elemental that way, and they'll often forget that it's in the graveyard, so you can just, you know, unearth it later and swing in for a surprise 3 damage. Okay, Keldon Marauders is actually pretty nice. It has Vanishing 2, which kind of sucks, but enters the battlefield, deals 1 damage to the opponent, leaves the battlefield, deals 1 damage to the opponent. So especially if your opponent's playing kind of a slower deck, get it down on turn 2, you know, deal 1 damage, swing on turn 3, deal 1 damage, and then leaves the battlefield and does another damage. So usually, often you can get in for 5 with the Keldon Marauders. If it gets removed, that's okay too. You still do 1 damage to your opponent. Magma Jet. Now, Magma Jet, I was a little bit skeptical about Magma Jet, but it is an awesome card. Right? Like, for instance, I was saying, like, well, why wouldn't you just play Hellspark Elemental or something like that? Now, the reason why is because Magma Jet can be played on your opponent's end step, so you just hold up the mana. You can burn them from the face for 2. Yeah, it's not 3, but okay. But the cool thing is that you can scry for 2. And often, like for instance, you'll be playing and you'll scry and you'll see like 2 mountains, right? So you have 3 mountains down already. You know, on turn 3, at the end of your opponent's turn, you're about to go into your 4th turn, you scry 2, you see 2 mountains. Like, that really sucks, because that would mean that your next 2 turns you're not going to draw any burn. Right, so what this deck wants to do is race your opponent. So it wants to draw a burn as fast as possible, and Magma Jet just helps it do that a lot. So Magma Jet's definitely like almost like a must include for me. Okay, Skullcrack is really, really nice. Okay, holding up 2, player can't gain life this turn. That's mainly the thing. Also, damage can't be prevented, and Skullcrack does 3. Alright, so 3 damage for 2 mana is pretty good. And often, like if you have Magma Jet in your hand and Skullcrack and you're holding up 2 mana, like I said, most of these spells are played on your opponent's turn. So you're holding up your mana, right? Your opponent plays. If they cast a creature out, you might Skullcrack or something like that, depending on the creature. But at the end of the turn, if they don't really have anything out, then you can choose Magma Jet and control your next draw step. So I really like that one. Now, Searing Blaze is kind of weird because, yes, it is an instant, but you almost never cast it on your opponent's end step. And the reason why is because you want to get it for its landfall trigger. Right? So you want to be able to drop a land down and then deal 3 damage to a player. It's really nice if they've got a creature down because it's kind of a 2-for-1. Yeah, it costs 2 red, but it's like bolting a creature and also bolting your opponent. Right? So 3 to the creature, 3 to the opponent, assuming you get a land down. So Searing Blaze can be very, very strong. I really like this card a lot. Alright, Flames of the Blood Hand basically is the big brother of Skullcrack. Deals 4 damage to target player. That damage can't be prevented, and they can't gain life again this turn. That's really important because even if your opponent gains, like, I don't know, let's say 3 or 4 life, that's an extra burn spell or 2 that you've got to burn in order to bring them down. So preventing your opponent from gaining life is very, very important. Especially like really bad matchups like Soul Sisters or something like that. You want to kill those sisters as soon as possible. Right, so that's one of the times when if I had a bolt, I would kill a Soul Sister immediately. Like, yes, you are wasting like a bolt on a 1/1. Okay, so you got like a Soul Warden, you're going to waste 3 damage on it. But the big thing is that you're like, as soon as they start gaining any life, you're going to be wasting extra bolts anyways, and that creature will just help them get out of hand. So you need to remove life gain as soon as possible. The last card is Rift Bolt, 3 mana for doing 3 damage to target creature or player. So it looks like kind of a crappy lightning bolt, but what you can do is suspend it for 1 and then just cast it for free on your next turn. Right, you're still casting it. So for instance, if your opponent plays out a Thalia or whatever, they can still counter it. Right, let's see. Then one of the cool things is that if you have this in your hand, you almost always want to cast it on your first turn. Right, so you put down a mountain, tap, suspend this. Even if you have a Lava Spike, I would say get a Rift Bolt down as soon as possible, mainly because you don't want to have to wait for it. There's a match that I played and where, like, if I could have won, like I could have won if I had just drawn a burn spell, but I drew a Rift Bolt, and like a Rift Bolt would suspend, and then I ended up losing that match because I just couldn't get the burn out as fast as possible. So while this is a really good card, you want to use it up as quickly as you can. Alright, so there's tons of options for sideboarding, but what I chose is just a little bit of an upgrade. So Smash to Smithereens to destroy target artifacts, Searing Blood, just again, if your opponent has creatures, right, so you do 2 damage to target creature. When the creature dies this turn, Searing Blood does 3 damage to the creature's controller. Kind of like Searing Blaze, but, you know, maybe not as good, but, you know, almost the same type of thing. 2 more Flames of the Blood Hand in case your opponent's gaining more life, and also deals 4 damage, which is pretty sweet. And 4 Leyline of Punishment. Remember what I said about life gain. Life gain is really, really bad for this deck. So what you want to do is, like, if your opponent has any life gain at all, maybe put a couple of these in during sideboarding and, you know, prevent them from gaining life. Or if they're trying to, like, you know, have some weird fog type effect where they're preventing damage, you know, get this down so that that damage can't be prevented. All right. Lastly, and this is what the only real change I made to Saffron Olive's deck, is to add in 4 Blood Moons. Alright, now Blood Moon is basically sometimes like the most oppressive card you can play against, like non-basic lands or mountains. Alright, so you put that down, you know, all your opponent's non-basics become mountains, and if they're playing in different colors, it's just awful. Like, one of the toughest things I had was one time I was playing Lantern Control. Like, I was the pilot of Lantern Control. I know, everyone hates Lantern Control, but I really like playing it. Opponent dropped a Blood Moon on me, and it just wrecked me. And you'd say, like, well, why would that wreck you? Okay, well, the reason why is because you don't have the mana to cast, like, you know, Lantern Control relies on all of its stuff, like, you know, like Glimmer Voids and stuff like that to get its mana to cast Ancient Stirrings and, you know, and sacrifices Pyrite Spell Bombs and stuff like that. And you can't do that anymore, and so you just accumulate cards in your hand, and then your Ensnaring Bridge doesn't work. Right, and then you just get blown up by ensnaring because their creatures can overrun your ensnaring bridge. You know, different builds of Lantern Control could be different, of course, but yeah, that card was just awful to play against. Anyways, that's pretty much the deck. Like I said, it's pretty cheap. You can probably put it together like this for less than $150 in paper. You know, it's pretty fun to play. I could see that. I would suspect that over time it would get boring to play against, or to play, just because, you know, like, you're basically doing the same kind of thing every turn. But, you know, overall, it's a good entry deck. It's extremely competitive. You know, I would say it's probably a tier 1 deck, but it's just great. Anyways, remember, if you do like the video, please like and subscribe. It may not seem like it, but liking and subscribing really does help the channel. If you have extra or other cards that you would suggest to put in, like maybe Vexing Devil would be better, or Goblin Guide or something like that, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. It's that time again for Random Card Review, where we pick a random card and see what we think. So let's take a look. Plains. Well, plains are really great for producing white mana. I think if you're playing white, you probably should have them. 5 out of 5. Alright, let's go to a different card. Alright, Corpse Hauler. Corpse Hauler is a common 2 mana for a 2/1. 2 mana for a 2/1 is not very good. Like, typically you'd want to have like a 2/2 at least, but you know, we'll see what its ability is. For 2 and a black, sacrifice Corpse Hauler, return another target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. I guess it could be okay. Maybe in limited it'll be alright, like, so you get some creature recursion. It doesn't have a big but. I'd rather have as a 1/2 and do that. But I don't know. Yeah, I would say that maybe 2 out of 5. Like, the 2.5 out of 5 is probably a little bit high, but the flavor text is okay. He expects a reward, but the only piece of silver he'll get from me is my blade in his gut. I think that actually what you should have to do is pick one of your cards and play, and you have to say the flavor text at the beginning of every round. That would just be super annoying, but I think it'd be pretty awesome too. Especially like Reaper King. Reaper King's got some of the best flavor text. It's harvest time. Right? Anyways. Yeah, Corpse Hauler I'd say is maybe 2, maybe 1.5. I think this 2.5 rating is a little high. It's probably higher just because it's good and limited. But anyways, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. See you next time.